What is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here with another GSD Mode podcast interview, where every single week I interview top real estate professionals, top entrepreneurs, and straight up top badasses out there dominating their space. Now, real quick, before we jump into this podcast interview, because look, I want to make sure that I'm supporting and helping you as much as I possibly can on your own real estate success journey. So if you would like to schedule a 100% free, zero pressure Zoom coaching call with me personally. This is going to be a 60-minute long Zoom coaching call with you and I. What we're going to do a deep dive breakdown into your real estate business, what your goals are, what your strengths are, what your biggest obstacles are. Then based on that, I'm going to map out my personal recommended strategy to get you from where you're at to where you're looking to go in the quickest, most effective, efficient, profitable manner possible. This is something that you want to take advantage of. Go to www.gsdmode.com/Zoom call, or you can go to gsdmode.com. You'll see a banner at the top, plus a bunch of other free resources. Pick up my free ebook, other webinars, other trainings on there. All right, so if that's something you want to take advantage of, again, www.gsdmode.com/Zoom call. Now let's get into this epic GSD Mode podcast interview. All right, what is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here with another GSD Mode podcast interview, where every single week I interview top entrepreneurs, top real estate professionals, and straight up top badasses out there dominating their space. And today, guys, we got an extremely special guest here on the GSD Mode podcast. Our guest today is the #1 global team with eXp and has been for the past 3 years straight, and in all three categories. So we're talking #1 in sales, so #1 in units, #1 in sales volume, and #1 in gross commissions earned. So really stoked and honored to have Avery on the podcast. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about this. So before we get into, because you're doing so many amazing things and doing things very uniquely, differently, really niche down, which I'm excited to learn a lot about. But before we dive into that, I'm always really intrigued in our guests' journeys that led them to this place, and to begin with. And so if we were to unpack this, because you've done all of this in a very short period of time, in the real estate space, so before that, like, let's rewind the clocks. Like, what did you do before you got into real estate, and ultimately what led you into real estate?
Sure. So before I got into real estate, I worked in the music business. So I graduated undergrad at the worst time to graduate in the spring of 2009. So was not able to get a job as a soft major like communication. And so I had been playing in bands all through college and high school. And I toured in bands and bartended until the job market came back. Then I went back and got my master's and decided to go work in the business side of music in Nashville. Moved from New York City to Nashville because it was closer to where I grew up in Mississippi, and found very quickly that I did not like that. I thought that it was going to be a lot of people like me who, had that interest in music, and then we're working on the business side of it because, it just to be close to it. But it wasn't. It was like a bunch of dorks who wanted to be in a room with famous people and are willing to get paid $0 a year in order to do that. And so my husband and I thought about getting into real estate investing because we try to make this as short as possible. So we had a little bit of money saved up, not much at all, like $10,000. And we took it to an Edward Jones and said, help us invest this, help us, do the right thing with this. We just got married and we're really into personal finance and trying to make sure we were doing everything right. And they told us we didn't have enough money to work with us. And we were like, oh, cool. We're totally let out of our sales. Let's go kill ourselves now. So anyway, we were like, well, we got to do something with this. There's got to be something we can do with this. And when we were moving from New York to Nashville, our real estate agent was really trying to get us to buy in this super hip, fast appreciating part of Nashville called East Nashville. And we were like, no, thanks. We're moving from Brooklyn to Tennessee. We're done with neighbors. We're going out in the country. So we bought something out in the country, but we kept thinking about how much appreciation, she said, was happening in that market. People's houses were appreciating like $100,000 a year, which was a lot at the time. We didn't know COVID was around the corner. And we said, well, maybe if we buy one of those and we put a renter in it and we just let them pay the mortgage for the next 18, 25 years, however long it takes us to have kids and get them grown, then when they need to go to college, we can just sell that and pay for their college out of that appreciation, hopefully. And we will be these great personal finance geniuses. And we didn't even know it was called real estate investing at the time. So we bought one, and that house made about $1,000 over the mortgage every month, which coincidentally, after all the deductions on my paycheck, was about what I made at my job every day. And so we said, wait a minute, that is doubling my income while we're sleeping. We need to dive further into this. And so then we started educating ourselves on investing in real estate. We had a little bit of money left, and we bought a short-term rental because we had just one down payment left, and we said, well, what can we buy that's going to make us the most amount of money the fastest so that we can go buy more? And so we landed on short-term rentals. We did not want to do it in Nashville because the regulations were just so volatile. We could not afford to buy something and then be told 6 months later, hey, never mind, you can't do this. So we bought a cabin in the Smoky Mountains. This was in 2016, so well before the whole Airbnb boom. And we figured out how to manage that ourselves. At the time, there were no courses, there were no YouTubes. You just put it on a property manager. But the property management companies, the split was 40%. Like that was the standard of your gross income. And we were like, no, we need that 40% so we can go buy more. And so we figured out how to manage them remotely from Nashville. And that was around then that I got my license so that we could just move with a little bit more speed. My husband's a New Yorker and dealing with a lot of Southern, such as myself, I'm Southern, so I can say this, real estate agents who like did not get that. It just doesn't mix the Southern hospitality and like courteousness and his New Yorkness just didn't go together. So I got my license to stop having to have that conversation so I could do our deals. And it just kind of happened organically. But anyway, you just asked me what I was doing before I got into real estate. So I'll stop there.
Okay. Yeah. So initially then kind of sounds like the intent of getting the license was just to be able to acquire with more effectiveness and efficiency your own portfolio. At what point did it click of like, hey man, we could also turn this into maybe this separate business and helping others and growing this, empire that you built now today?
It clicked immediately, both immediately, and it also took a long time to click. So immediately it clicked because we had friends who would say, you're making how much on that cabin in the Smokies? Help me buy one. Teach me how to do that. So I started organically getting friend clients and then friends of friends, and then it became real, quote, real clients that, I didn't know prior to doing it. But I still wanted to be just like, every agent wants to be a luxury agent. I still wanted to do, because, the Smokies was 3 hours, almost 4 hours away from where I lived in Nashville. And so I wanted to be doing like cool Nashville real estate and doing luxury real estate in Nashville and primary homes. And because at the time, these were $150,000 properties, and the primary homes in Nashville were $500,000, and I'd have to drive 4 hours. And it took me a good year to let that go and just say, because I didn't want to pigeonhole myself. I was so worried about pigeonholing myself. Why? I don't know. It's like, it was brand new. I didn't have any clients anyway. There's nothing to pigeonhole. But after I was fired by my friend's parents, who I drove all over Middle Tennessee. I'm talking about houses 3 hours apart from each other, like 4 weekends in a row. They fired me. I just sold about $30 million worth of investment real estate in the Smokies, and they fired me on a $100,000 house because I didn't know where to find what was effectively the serial number of a mobile home. And I'm like, okay, I just got fired over $100,000 house. $30 million worth of investors have trusted me with this deal, with their deals, and these people are firing me over this. I don't need to be doing this anymore. Why am I doing this? So after that, I was like, I am pigeonholing myself. I am going to be the short-term rental girl. That's where the clients are coming the easiest. Why am I fighting that? I don't know. So that's when I kind of decided, okay, that's when it clicked, really.
Yeah. Love it. Okay. So then at this point, like you mentioned, you've done 30 million in short-term investment units with clients, decided to really just continue with that niche and go all in on that. At what point then did it get to that element of your business where it was like, hey, we need the right leverage. Like we need to start thinking about creating a team other than just, and I at this point, was your husband involved as well at real estate by this point?
So he wasn't. He was and still is, but just part-time on the weekends now, a classic rock DJ on Sirius XM.
Okay.
So at the time he was still full-time with Sirius, and it started getting busier in 2018. And when I first started, I should add, before I decided to pigeonhole myself, uh, I was on a Keller Williams team for about 2 weeks in Nashville. And I hated that so much that I lasted 2 weeks, cost me about $8,000 in my own commissions that they took a 50% split of. Like, I got those under contract before I came on the team, got on the team for 2 weeks, left, and they counted that as theirs, their split. So like, I was very anti-team. I hated teams. I thought they were stupid. I thought they were horrible. And then I got pregnant with our first child, and the driving back and forth towards the end and of course, ramping up and getting busier and busier. I got to the point where I was going to have to hire somebody because I can't be driving 4 hours away from the hospital at 8 months pregnant. So I did. I started with a showing assistant, and she, long story short, tried to take every client that I had and take my whole business. And it didn't work, but it scared me to death. So it was actually a really good lesson, because had that not happened on my first one, then it would have happened, at a time when there was a lot more to take, or maybe by somebody who was more capable of doing that. So really glad that that happened. But it was around then. So that would have been 2018 that I decided, okay, I need a few more agents to help me with this. I can't handle this workload anymore, even if I wasn't having a baby. So it started then, and it was very hard for me to let go and to just hand over my clients that I'd been so used to taking care of and have my specific ways of doing things and who are used to working with me. It was very difficult for me to do that. But once I fully did and actually trusted and delegated and made sure my agents were trained, then things really took off.
Yeah. So with that, I mean, look, the first hire, at least for most, is the hardest, because it is, I mean, that trust factor, that fear, that, and something that you said, there's like, once, they're fully trained, and it sounds like, I mean, I don't want to make assumptions here. What was the key for you that allowed you? Because we're also not talking about, like, okay, like within my team here in Phoenix, we kind of specialize more in just regular residential real estate. I mean, we work with a lot of investors as well, but we're not as niche down as you. So, okay, like if I have an agent, let's just say, messes up a Zillow lead, it's like, okay, that's one lead. But you might have an investor client that's buying 10 units a year every single year, like clockwork from you. So, there are more to lose with some of these relationships, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So what
Yeah.
allowed you to be able to have that faith and that trust to be able to go delegate in those beginning phases where I know it's so difficult?
So, well, learning to hire the right attorney, to have the right paperwork so that people don't take all your clients if they decide to leave. So, even just the act of saying, hey, you're signing this saying you're not going to contact these clients anymore if you leave, it weeds out. There's a weeding out process. And what worked for me is I just very coincidentally happen to have two past clients who own short-term rentals, who've been through the process with me as their agent, move to the area and say, hey, I'm an agent. If you need any help, I would love to work for you. And so that really helped, because they'd already been through the process with me. They had the right mindset because they own short-term rentals. We can get into that later. It's very difficult to hire the right type of agent for a position with us, because it's a very different mindset than selling primary homes. Like, I'm terrible at selling primary homes. I got fired from selling primary homes. And I don't know that that's necessarily something you can train somebody's brain. Because when someone says, oh, I really like this one, but I don't like the kitchen, I'm like, pay 20 grand and update the kitchen. It's just a number. That's not what most primary home people's brain, where their brain is. So for me, the numbers of, hey, this thing doesn't have to be perfect because these are the numbers and this is what you're paying for it, and it works the way that it is. So anyway, I had a few past clients move to the area who still work for me today. So 6, 7 years later. And that really, really helped, because they'd already done it. They'd already seen how I do it. So they could mirror that much more easily than if they'd never seen it before.
Okay. Yep. Yep. So then, okay. So now you're starting to, add leverage, building the team, cause I mean, it looks like, at least from what I could tell, from your website, like you guys have expansion teams in a lot of different states now. Yeah. I noticed that you're like right down the street from me here even. At what point during this journey was it like, okay, we need to take this, beyond the Smoky Mountains, beyond, Tennessee, like beyond your territory? At what point did that begin?
Also around end of 2018, beginning of 2019. So we kind of, the short-term shop has kind of been modeled after like my own investment journey, and understanding that, okay, if this is the route that I went, other people are probably having these same thoughts too. This is probably a similar process for them. So we started in the Smokies, and then we said, well, I'd really like to have a beach house. So I grew up again in North Mississippi, so I was very familiar with the Smoky Mountains because we went there growing up. And when you live in the Southeast, you go to Destin, Florida, or Gulf Shores every summer to go on vacation. You're either a Gulf Shores family or you're a Destin 30A family. And so we were Destin people. My grandmother had a house here since the 60s. And but she didn't own that until later anyway. But we always stayed in beach houses, condos, not hotels. And so we thought, well, Destin is a very similar market to the Smokies. It's just people are going to visit a different natural resource. So now that we've got 3 or 4 in the Smokies, I think that process is going to be pretty repeatable with a beach house in Destin. Very, very similar. So we bought one, and it was very similar. And so since we had one, we were like, well, you know what? Maybe we need to open an office here, and we can help people. We've helped people buy in the Smokies. We can help people buy in Destin. And so Destin was our first expansion team, followed very closely by Gulf Shores. And once we realized that we could repeat our process with the client base that we already have, so we don't have to go do a bunch of crazy marketing to get clients in these markets. Our clients, since investors typically buy more than one, we're now just expanding our offerings for the client base that we already have. We don't have to go build a bunch of different client bases. So as things progressed, and we would just keep an eye on the data and on the markets, and listen to our clients and where else they wanted to buy. And if we found a market that made sense, which it has to make sense, it has to be big enough for there to be enough volume of sales for an agent to be able to live. So, if like Starkville, Mississippi, maybe a couple short-term rentals get sold a year, that's probably not going to work. But a big volume market like Scottsdale near you, or really any beach market, lots of mountain markets and lots of national park markets, that kind of stuff does work. So we just started listening to our clients and listening to the data about where might be good markets to open up. And then we would just open up there.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's kind of the opposite of like how a lot of other expansion teams, meaning like most expansion team leaders that I talk to, it's kind of like, okay, how they pick their next territory is based on the people. And if they have the right people, the right leadership team. But with yours, because you're so niche down, it's like, hey, it's got to really pop when it comes to big, great opportunities for short-term vacation rentals. And then I'm guessing that there's a people component that comes into that play as well.
Yeah. And there are definitely markets that I would love to open up in, but we haven't found the right people. And the people part, I mean, in any business, the people part is the hardest part, right?
Yep. Love it. So then, right, because I want to, really get into, the importance of niching down and, but before we do that, just to give some context, I mean, what is it? What are the numbers? And you don't have to share if you don't feel comfortable. Like, when people hear, okay, #1 eXp global agent from sales, like, what does that look like? Like, what was 2023 from a sales, like, just to give everybody some context of how much volume you truly do?
So 2023, we did about 600 million. 2022, we did $1 billion. And 2021 was, I think it was 680 million. So we had obviously that big bump from the interest rates being super low. So I think since we started, we've helped over 5,000 investors buy and sell short-term rentals. And that comes out to about 3.5 billion in volume.
Yep. And that's what, like in a 5-year period of time?
About, yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, right. Like I've been running a team doing this for 20 years, and that's like what's taken me 20 years to do, you've done in 5. Yeah, right. That's so absolutely phenomenal. Hey, Joshua Smith here, and I really hope that you are enjoying this GSD Mode podcast so far. We'll get back to it here in a quick second. Just want to do a quick reminder that, look, if you're a real estate agent, team leader, and broker owner, and your real estate business is not exactly where you want and need, and you do not know exactly what you must do to get from where you're at to where you want to go, if that's you, I invite you to schedule a 100% free Zoom coaching call with me personally. This is going to be a 60-minute long Zoom coaching call with you and I. We're going to do a deep dive breakdown into your business, what you're doing, what you've been doing, what's going well, what's not going well, what your biggest obstacles are, your current situation. Then from there, I'm going to map out my exact recommended strategy to get you from where you're at to where you want to go in the most quickest, effective, profitable manner possible. So if this is you, something that you want help with, something that you want to take advantage of, go to www.gsdmode.com/Zoom call, www.gsdmode.com/Zoom call, or wherever you're watching or listening. If you just go in the description or the show notes, the top link right there will be a link to go out there and schedule that. Looking forward to jumping on this free coaching call to help you get dialed inside your real estate business soon. Now let's get back to this epic GSD Mode podcast. We hear these sayings like, oh, the riches are in the niches, and seems to be true in any industry, but then the how-to just never really gets explained.
Right.
So can you kind of walk through, like, if anyone's watching or listening to this, really thinking about niching down, whether that be on the investor side, short-term vacation rentals, long-term buy and holds, or any other niche, like what kind of advice would you have there on like how to get started on identifying the niche, and maybe even start a step back of like the importance of really niching down and what that allows you to go out there and do?
Yeah. So, I mean, in my story, it's definitely, once I did niche down, it just exploded. And I think when you're focusing on the thing that you're good at, like, Gary Keller's one thing, when you're focusing on the thing that you're good at, the business is going to come easier. And so I tell people this when you're picking a niche, but also like when you're picking a market to invest in, pick something that you know. So if you're sitting here listening to this and you're like, man, she's been really successful selling short-term rentals, I'm going to go sell short-term rentals. It's not going to work for you the same way it worked for me, because this was something that I knew, that I wasn't even planning on being a real estate agent, but it was something that, because that was the thing that I knew, my like genius zone, so to speak, that the business came easier there. And the business did not come easy for me in the primary home space. So you have to start with what you know. So maybe you are like country club guy, like you are playing golf out there every day. That's probably where you're going to get most of your business the easiest. It would be much easier for someone like that who's out there playing golf or tennis or pickleball every day, who knows everybody at the country club, to get into that luxury space than it was for me. Or maybe you coach your kids' soccer team and you've gotten 2 or 3 leads from having coached your kids' soccer team. Well, okay, so you're like the kid parent person, and maybe you need to go coach T-ball and join the PTA. Actually, I did have a guy recently follow me. I don't know why I looked at him, but his profile was the dad agent. And I was like, let me look at this. And it said, his tagline was, real estate with the experience of a dad, or the expertise of a dad. And I'm like, that's hilarious branding. I would totally buy a house with that guy, because that's funny. So, focus on where the business comes easy for you. And if you don't have business yet, focus on where you are. Where do you spend your most time? What activity, where you're dealing with the most people? Maybe you do a lot of Orange Theory, maybe those are your people. So you've got to find what works for you, and don't try to just listen to what somebody else has been successful with and do that same thing. They had a thing that was most comfortable for them, where the business came easiest, and focus on that thing. I resisted that thing for a good year and a half and didn't get anywhere. So just focus in on where that business comes easiest, and that's your niche.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause then from there, I mean, we've all heard the saying, like, you can either be a jack of all trades and a master of none, or, I always look at less is more, right? Because then you can really truly master that thing and do more of that thing. And again, we see it in all other niches. Like, okay, a neurosurgeon makes way more than a general practitioner.
Yeah. And I mean, there was a girl when I was bartending, there was a real estate agent who was a regular who came into that bar every single day, and she sold everybody in that bar, which was quite a few people. It was a popular bar, a house. And this was, again, East Nashville back then. And back then those houses were 200,000. Now she's selling those houses for those people that are $1 million houses. So, I mean, it can be something as easy as the neighborhood bar that you go to.
Yeah. So speaking though, like to your niche specifically, for those that, I mean, because look, it appears, and this has been a trend for a long time, but it appears that, people are buying less and less and, investing more and more, and whether that be on the STR or the LTR side, with both of those. And the reason why I've always loved investors as well, in my business is, I mean, number one, you don't have to deal with the emotions. It's just numbers. And then number two, it's like, I mean, I've had certain, and these are bigger institutions that I deal with, but it's like, I mean, it could be 20 units a month consistently, through one investor, client, like, we've represented, Blackstone since 2012. And, so just the velocity of transactions per customer and whatnot. So what do you find? Because you mentioned earlier that it's, kind of like two different minds, when if somebody's doing regular residential real estate and then trying to get them to understand the invest, like what are things that you look for, or if somebody's watching or listening to this that wants to kind of start niching down, on more of the investor side, like what would you say is important for them to either kind of have the traits of, or to make sure that they dial in and get to know to be able to have success in this type of a niche?
So if you want to be an investor agent, I would say go listen to every episode in chronological order. Start with episode 1 of the Bigger Pockets podcast, because all that is, I mean, I've been on Bigger Pockets a number of times. They published my book. I started when I bought my first house listening to Bigger Pockets on my run. I am definitely a product of Bigger Pockets. We've got 250 investment doors now of our own. And just go listen to that. That's, the best way to learn is by doing, but sometimes we're constrained monetarily and can't just go invest in something just so I know how to be the investor agent. But listening to all the Bigger Pockets podcasts will get you as close as you can without actually, going and buying real estate and learning how to do it.
Okay. Yep. Love that. So then, okay. So when it comes to what's working for you guys right now, when it comes to generating customers, I mean, it sounds like you built this amazing portfolio and book of business of current customers, but when it comes to gathering new customers, what are you doing? And especially now that you're kind of, and maybe this applies, maybe it doesn't, because I know that you mentioned earlier, like your customers are kind of buying, like they don't care about location as long as it's performance. But I guess what are different tools and things that you're doing currently for lead generation?
So for me, I always, when I notice we're in like a weird part of the real estate cycle. So I guess there's really only been 2 bad parts of the real estate cycle since I've been licensed. One was when COVID happened, not the afterward boom, but like at the time that it happened, we did hit a big slump. It wasn't for very long, but we didn't know that at the time. And then, the past 2 years of the high interest environment. So my philosophy has been, when I see other agents backing off of their marketing, I just hit the gas on what I'm doing a little bit harder, because what's going to happen is when the market swings back around, everybody's going to go, oh, the market swung back around. Let me turn my marketing back on. But the first wave of buyers will already be in there buying. So for me, I just try to keep it super consistent. I will say 80% of our closings this year have been investors who have already bought one with us previously. So, as you know, this is one of the worst years for real estate, maybe in the history of real estate. Fewer homes sold this year and last year than in the whole 2008 crisis. So very, very low sales comparatively to 2021. But 80% of our closings, which I think we're at about 300 million right now, year to date, which it's the beginning of August, are past clients of ours. And I don't have this data because they wouldn't have bought with us, but the other 20%, I would love to know, and I need to look at this, if they are already short-term rental owners and just didn't buy with us previously. But the vast majority of our buyers right now are previous clients or experienced investors. They're not first-time investors. So we're not doing a lot of new client, like new lead generation, other than just, staying the course, waiting for things to swing back around.
Yep. Now, okay. So in somebody that's here's this statement, until they've experienced it, it may not make sense to them, but growing pains can be much harder to manage and worse than slow pains.
Yes.
And it's something like, okay, 50% of all short-term vacation rentals that are owned throughout the United States were acquired post-COVID. I mean, that's just a stat I've heard. I don't have a way of vetting that to know for sure. But, so with that explosion of growth, I'm sure that you had some, and maybe even continue to, like, those massive growing pains. How did you handle that? Like, what did to be able to handle that kind of volume and that explosion?
Oof, yes, we definitely have had the growing pains. Just not being able to find enough good people to work for us during that time, because I mean, everybody was overworked. Everybody was dying on their keyboards. I was getting complaints from clients. I'm having to chase down my agent. They're not being proactive. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, they can't even feed themselves. Nobody has time to do anything. I was having to jump in and do like assistant work to help my agents get through. So, managing volume, I think getting systems in place and getting good tools in place before you're busy enough to need them. So, maybe you're like, I don't want to pay for Follow Up Boss or whatever. I love Follow Up Boss. I do not have an affiliate agreement. I don't get paid to say that. I love Follow Up Boss. Maybe you don't want to invest in that thing that will help you, but because you don't have enough people yet. But it is a lot harder to learn how to use a tool that's supposed to streamline things for you when you are getting crushed by volume. You can't learn how to use it. B, you can't learn how to use it effectively because you're having to deal with so many things. And you're actually probably not going to use it at all because you can't take the time to learn it because you have to stop and jump in and deal with all of these things. So for me, I would say get your systems and your processes and your action plans and your touch points in place when you're low volume, because it's much easier to learn on the way up than get to a certain amount of volume and go, oh crap, it would be a lot easier if I had this one thing to do this thing for me. So do it on the front end. Even if it's an expense, you will be happy that you did it and you learned it when you were low volume, because there's nothing worse than trying to play catch up when you've got a bunch of clients, who need things, who you are not serving well because you're not organized.
Yeah. Yeah. And then when it comes to, because running this large real estate team that's now multi-state, you're essentially you're running a huge sales organization. And you got, obviously support staff with that. But when it comes from on the agent side of this, what are some key things that you've learned, like advice that you would give to other, growing, expanding team leaders that want to take this into, mega team status, maybe, getting to those 1,000 units a year? Like what are some of the most important things that you've learned through this journey that maybe you wish you would have known early on, that you'd give them advice of when it comes specifically to the agents on your team?
That's such a good question. And there's so many ways that I could take it, positive ways and negative ways. I would say, the thing that's been the hardest for me is because coming from a place of trying to be cool and trying to be someone that people want to work for and want to do a good job for, and trying not to be someone that people are scared of their boss. I have done some things, or I've not done some things, and kind of left people to their own devices when I kind of shouldn't have. For example, making people log things in the CRMs and making people set up their action plans in Follow Up Boss and or whatever CRM you're using. Just trusting them to make sure they're doing their follow up and touching the clients enough. I think that has kind of hurt me. I think we've lost listings because I haven't been requiring people, hey, you need to follow up at X point, Y point, and Z point, and we're checking in the CRM to make sure that this is being logged and that this is being done. Things get missed. And I think that, me, again, wanting to come from a place of being cool and not being a terrible boss has, and not being firm about making sure things are documented, has definitely bitten me. And I wish I would have just started that from the beginning. And it all comes back to getting things more organized. And if a client calls and says, hey, my agent is really unresponsive, and then they haven't logged into the CRM and done anything in a month and a half, then I can't see like, oh, looks like they emailed you on this day and this day. Did you get that? Did you receive that? So really just making sure that you are keeping an eye and making sure that you have your hands in the follow-up and the touch points. Really the follow-up and the staying in contact that is the most important. So anyway, now I'm just rambling, but definitely just making sure that you're firm about your processes up front when you're growing a team, and not get so comfortable with trying to be someone that they like and they want to do a good job for. You have to actually make sure they're doing that as well.
Yep. Yep. 100%. So then what has it been like, cause it's one thing where, okay, in your market, your location, even though there can be some virtual components to it, but it can be a little bit easier to manage culture.
Mhm.
Now you're also, managing agents and teams that are 1,000 miles, 1,500 miles away from you. With that expansion, like what has it been like, to kind of keep that culture, keep that same feeling together, where they don't feel like, well, hey man, I'm out in Scottsdale, Arizona, 1,500 miles away from you, where they don't feel like they're not a part of the team, where they still feel part of it, even though there's that big distance.
We do a lot of slacking, like the app Slack, not actual slacking. So we have, there are probably 1,000 messages in our Slack every single day. Everybody's really, so we have 2 team meetings a week. So 2 virtual on Zoom meetings a week that are pretty well attended. And then on Slack, there's a lot of, not just channels of like, oh, hey, here's our channel dedicated to the new NAR situation. Here's our channel dedicated to all these business things. But we even have like this is what I bought on Amazon this week channel, or a recipes channel. We have a health and fitness channel. We have actually more than one bodybuilding competition person on our team in separate markets. So that's a big one. So we just have like friendly banter going on back and forth in the fun channels. But then in the business channels, if you have any kind of problem, like situation that you're running into with a client or with another agent, with a lender, whatever, everybody puts it in there, and you have 50 experienced agents saying like, oh yeah, I've dealt with that before. Let me tell you what happened. Let me tell you how we dealt with it. And so I think that's really, really valuable, that even if it is other markets, that you have 50 other agents who aren't necessarily competing with you too, which is nice. So being able to just say like, oh, hey, yeah, let's brainstorm and let's talk about this, and let's everybody help this one agent get to the solution that they need. So it's really cool.
Yep. Awesome. So then, all right. So one of the niches that we've been really focused on for the last 2 years, for the previous decade, it was helping our investor clients on the acquisition side. But over the last 2 years, the narratives kind of changed there, where things are flipping. So we've really niched down, started targeting, going after absentee owners, specifically STRs and LTRs that maybe bought wrong. Their rents are coming down, occupancy rates are really down, whole costs going up. And we're having, it's been one of the best listing conversion sources that I've ever seen. And a chance to win, because either get the listing, if I don't get the listing, that's performing great. Now I have a conversation about seeing if they want to add additional properties to their portfolio. And, but when I'm coaching and teaching other agents about going after this niche, the common pushback that I have is, well, I don't have experience with investors. I feel uncomfortable. I'm intimidated. I know that this is something that, you probably have to work with a lot in your agents. Like, how would you advise somebody that's maybe new to work with investors to kind of get over that intimidation?
So if you're brand new and you've never worked with an investor before, it's really easy to think every investor wants this agent that knows everything there is to know about investing and owns a bunch of real estate and does all that. And I am that agent now, but I didn't start being that agent. There's a whole other sect of investors who don't really care what their agent knows. They just want like an assistant, basically. And it's not necessarily fun, but there were times that I drove out 4 hours to the Smoky Mountains to take a picture of a doorknob to see, so they could get the right lock for that door. And that's what you present yourself as if you're new, because there's value in a new person who isn't that busy, who they know will be able to go do those things, like take a picture of a doorknob for them if they need it, and they will give you the deal for it. So yes, some investors are going to want the high level investor agent, but then there's some that they're like, I know everything I need to know about this market and about what I want to buy. I just need you to be available when I call you. And so I would present yourself in that way to them. So it shouldn't be a situation where you're trying to pretend you know a lot about something that you don't. Just be honest and say, hey, I would love to work with you. I don't know a lot about X, Y, and Z, but I'm available and can do the tasks that you need help with. Because there's a lot of them. There's a lot of running around looking at things. And so just present yourself to an investor that way if you're brand new.
So totally kind of switching topics here, but it's okay. I'm on your website,
Okay.
just doing a little bit of research on you, due diligence on you before we jump in on the podcast. And it's like, I mean, like, and then I'm on your Instagram and it's like, okay, like, I can't remember what exact t-shirt was, like Megadeth or, whatever that you have on your, website. And then it's your husband, Luke, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And I mean, it looks like you guys are just extremely authentic to who you are, having fun. How important, it may be another way of, I should frame this a little bit better. How has that helped you with your business? Like just from an enjoyment factor, it was like, the first about 10 years before I exited from production operations in my real estate team, you know, I suited up every day and I hated every aspect of it, but I felt like I had to dress the part, and I wasn't authentic to who I was. And maybe that was okay. I don't, but I guess where I'm going with this is of just like, what has that done for you and from an overall just enjoyment factor, from your business?
It's much more enjoyable because I did have to dress business casual in a previous life. And I always felt like I felt like I was an imposter. I felt like I was somebody else and that I looked ridiculous, even though, I wasn't wearing anything crazy. And just to be able to, I am a rock and roller. I toured in shitty punk bands for years and years. And that is who I am at my core. I am still like a sloppy punk rocker, uh, deep down inside. And so it is nice to be able to just kind of wear what you want to wear. And, a lot of my clients I'm very into classic rock, classic metal, classic punk, like 70s and 80s. We stop at about 1991. Once grunge happened, I kind of lost interest, a little too serious for me. But a lot of my clients, when they get in the car and drive around with me, a lot of them were the right age and demographic to be really into the Megadeth shirt and like, oh my gosh, do you even know who that is? And then tell stories about, yeah, I've seen Megadeth, 10 times. And so it's definitely a conversation starter, if nothing else.
Yep. Yep. Hey, Joshua Smith here, and I really hope that you are enjoying this GSD Mode podcast so far. We'll get back to it here in a quick second. Just want to do a quick reminder that, look, if you're a real estate agent, team leader, and broker owner, and your real estate business is not exactly where you want and need, and you do not know exactly what you must do to get from where you're at to where you want to go, if that's you, I invite you to schedule a 100% free Zoom coaching call with me personally. This is going to be a 60-minute long Zoom coaching call with you and I. We're going to do a deep dive breakdown into your business, what you're doing, what you've been doing, what's going well, what's not going well, what your biggest obstacles are, your current situation. Then from there, I'm going to map out my exact recommended strategy to get you from where you're at to where you want to go in the most quickest, effective, profitable manner possible. So if this is you, something that you want help with, something you want to take advantage of, go to www.gsdmode.com/Zoom call, www.gsdmode.com/Zoom call, or wherever you're watching or listening. If you just go in the description or the show notes, the top link right there will be a link to go out there and schedule that. Looking forward to jumping on this free coaching call to help you get dialed inside your real estate business soon. Now let's get back to this epic GSD Mode podcast. All right, so then we're going through, we're recording this August 13th, and I'm going to, have it released with a couple days. So I will be really hearing this before the official rollout of, these new NAR changes. I'm curious, like, what have you been doing? Because again, I've got it easy in that my team's just in one state. I just got to worry about AAR, our new forms, but like, okay, our state, as you probably know, rolled out like 27 new and amended forms just for this change. Now you're in, dozen plus states or whatever. What are you guys doing to prepare for these?
So we have a really fantastic head of transaction coordinators department. Her name's Amity, and she so luckily we're with eXp, who has all kinds of training on everything all the time. And so she has gone to every single one for all of the states. And we've even had some of the states brokers get in with just our team and like do a team meeting with only our team to answer our questions. So Amity's been really good at making sure everybody understands what's going on in their different states, what's allowed, what's not allowed. And in the states where we've been able to, where we have a big enough presence, we have gotten the state brokers to just do a meeting with our team to make sure everybody understands how things work. Because I mean, there's some weird things. Like we dealt with one today where we've got our listing agent, we have an unrepresented buyer who is a licensee in another state who wants a referral fee. And we're like, well, wait a minute. There's no buyer agent commission to do a referral fee out of. You would ask your buyer's agent for that. But okay, can our seller, they can pay our listing agent a commission, but can they just pay a random licensee in another state a referral fee? A, they didn't want to, of course, but B, is that even allowed? So there's all these crazy things that are situations that are going to pop up that just we haven't dealt with before, that you really want to be able to get a hold of your broker pretty easily if you can. And so eXp has been really great about being available for us in that way.
Yeah. eXp out, and I'm saying this from like a neutral position. Like I'm not with eXp personally, so I don't, have so just from a guy that's kind of observing all of it, it seems like eXp's, as far as all the big companies, has really led the way. Like Leo Preya, who's been one of my closest friends in the industry for a long time, like that company's done such an amazing job at just making sure everybody's prep, getting in the forms business, even though I know Leo didn't want that, but felt they had to do that, right? And you guys have done an amazing job with it. So, and then, I got to imagine too, like one of the perks of being with eXp, because correct me if I'm wrong, but like with your caps, like that's not a per state thing, right? Like this applies. So it allows you in a much more profitable state to be operating in all these different places under just one cap. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. It's definitely made that a lot easier for us.
Yep. Now, are you seeing more of your short-term vacation rentals starting to have to like getting to the point where instead of acquiring, they're like unloading those properties, with occupancy rates dropping in most markets just due to the, what's going on with the overall economy?
Yeah. So we see some of that. So by the nature of the markets that we operate in, we don't see a lot of fluctuation in how many short-term rentals are available in them at any one time, because we focus on markets with the exception of like Scottsdale and the Sarasota area. The rest of our markets are like true vacation markets where like 90% of the real estate that's ever been bought and sold in those markets has been second homes and vacation rentals anyway. So we've been a little bit insulated from that. Like, if we operated in Houston and all these metro markets, Austin, places like that, we would probably see that a lot more. But I mean, you do get people selling anyway. So there's 50%, there's a statistic that says that 50% of all real estate investments, short-term rentals, commercial or otherwise, are sold within the first 2 years. And I find that to be true. We have people selling because they want a 1031 exchange into other properties. They can best deploy that equity elsewhere. We see people selling because they decided, I don't like dealing with people. And dealing with people is not fun. Like it does take a certain personality type to enjoy doing that. We see people who, unfortunately, we have seen people who did not necessarily buy right. In 2021, it was just so hard to get a property at all because there were so many people offering on every single property. People would buy a little too far out and it worked okay the first year because we were in that boom still. But as soon as the tide kind of rolled out, not really running that great anymore. So we do have a lot of listings right now, but I would say the majority of them are not what I would call distressed.
Okay. So when you hear the, there could be some truth to it. So I don't want to call it necessarily like fear porn, but when you hear Airbnb bust, like the short-term vacation market's going to crash and it's going to lead us into the next, housing market. Like you guys aren't experiencing, that like a huge severity of like people just getting crushed in that market.
No. So across our portfolio, we've seen like an 8% decline in revenue.
Yeah.
So it's nothing huge. I mean, there's definitely people who over leveraged, who bought stuff that what was slim anyway, and then spent another 200,000 on amenities and things like that. So we have not seen what I would call a bust. There are probably markets that did see a bust, but the markets that we're in, like, as you know, real estate's pretty market specific. And to say there's an Airbnb bust across the entire country, well, that's like saying all real estate in every single market is doing the exact same thing. And it just doesn't do that. So, what's happening in the Bay Area is not what's happening here in Destin, Florida. But just by the nature of the markets that we're in, we haven't seen a whole lot of that.
So by no means it's a niche that like you're not like you don't have plan B niche number two, that you got in your scope that you're starting to build up just in case that like you guys are still seeing massive and continued opportunity in this niche.
Yeah. And I mean, you just switch markets. So like for a while, I was buying long-term rentals in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and eventually the prices got high enough there and the rents didn't catch up enough that it didn't really make sense to do that anymore. So I shifted and started buying them in Birmingham, Alabama. So same thing with short-term rentals. There's an unlimited number of markets to get into. We're only in 20 of them. So if we start to see that a market is making more sense, then we'll get into that market. So just keep the whole thing fluid. And, I think that since short-term rentals are perceivedly a newer asset class, I don't think that they really are. I think a lot of people think that did not exist until 2020, but, Smoky Mountains in Tennessee has been primarily vacation rentals since the 60s here in Destin, Florida. I know my grandmother has been renting vacation rentals here since the 30s. So there's a lot of markets like that. So it's not as new of an asset class as people think, but because it's newer, people want to think it's going to end. But like, have apartment buildings ended, have single family long-term rentals ended. I think, everything's here to stay, but just because it's newer, it gets a little more like of that people who don't own any real estate, let me hate on something about real estate vibe. Oh, my uncle owned one of those and the guest burned it down. You're stupid for buying that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're just amongst a time where it's like, look, for social media, like it's like you got to be polarizing, you got to clickbait, you see, just you got to hear all this crazy crap. So, all right, so and just a few last questions for you, on a totally side, like a different note, but it's all life, right? So you built this absolutely insanely amazing business that you're continuing to grow and expand, but at the same point, I mean, you're a mother, you've got this life outside of real estate. And I'll get this a lot where like people think it's an either or. Well, I want to build a successful real estate business, but I also want to be a great mom. How have you balanced both? And I know balance isn't always a good word to use, but how do you make sure that you're doing both at a great level where, you're not dropping one of those glass balls that can't be fixed, like building, like the number one real estate team on the planet with eXp, but then also, hey, you got this family and you're taking care of your health and all of these other things.
That's a great question. We could do a whole other episode on that. So for me, part of the reason that we started investing in real estate and then why I got my license was because we were thinking about having a family. And I knew that my boss at the time, she was not going to be somebody there was no work from home was already a thing, but not at this company. Well, this company, yes, but this boss was not. There was no working from home and there was not going to be, she wasn't somebody who was going to understand hey, my kid has strep throat and I can't take him to school today. I'm going to stay home. That would have been something that with that particular manager, I would have been penalized for. So I was really thinking hard about that at the time. Like, how can I, because I enjoy working. I like school and I like working really hard. I'm weird. Okay. So, I was always thinking, well, I need to find a job where I don't have to shove my kid in daycare from 7 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock in the afternoon. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that person. I want to raise my own kids. And so I was always kind of on the hunt for that when I was in the corporate world. And then real estate came along and it kind of gave me the ability to do that. Now, you can't really time block in real estate or as a real estate agent, but what's worked for me is my husband and I both wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And so any like have to tasks get done before the kids wake up. And so like clearing, well, I cannot say I've ever cleared my email inbox, but doing the best I can at that, getting those main things done early in the morning, get the kids up, spend time with them, make them breakfast, get them ready to go to school, get them off to school. And just trying to I've never been a good worker after about noon. I know that about myself, even in corporate jobs. Like I'd get all my work done before noon. After lunch, I'm kind of worthless. So knowing that about myself, I just get up early enough and schedule all my meetings before noon to where everything's done. Like all things are done, or at least the things that can't be pushed until tomorrow by the time the kids get out of school. And so sometimes both of us, my husband and I both, will go pick them up together. And then we've got the rest of the day. Like so I coach all their soccer teams. He coaches T-ball, and we've just kind of been able to build our lifestyle around giving them the experience of having two stay-at-home parents. And somebody's going to have to leave the room after hours and be on the phone about something, but for the most part, we haven't done it perfect. I don't think anybody can, but we've done a really good job of building everything to where we can spend time with the kids as if they have two stay-at-home parents.
Now, I mean, was it, and I don't want to make an assumption, but was it always, that way by the time because you started having your first child, like right when you got into real estate. So I'm guessing that there might've been a time where, okay, that schedule didn't happen in that same way, but knowing that, okay, if we build this thing, this is what this will allow for.
Yeah. So at the beginning, when I was still in production, I stayed in production for a little less than 2 years after I had our first kid. Second kid came 2 years later. So they're 2 years apart. And I just took her everywhere. And I didn't take her on showing. So we would schedule and I would pump and make sure he had enough milk to get him through. And it just took a lot of planning, but the way we would do it back then, and this is before COVID. So we didn't have childcare or anything like that. So he would get up early, get his stuff done, and get he was still on the radio. So he would get his recording done. And then we would just kind of trade off, like, you're working 2 hours, I've got the baby for 2 hours, and then you've got the baby for 2 hours while I get some things done. And we would just trade off every couple hours until we were done working. So that was, it was difficult, and looking back, I don't know how we did it, but somehow we did it.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, it was worth it, right? Because I mean,
Oh,
look
yeah.
at what you've got now, on all fronts, not just from a monetary and a wealth standpoint, but now you've got that time, which is something that I think all of us parents would love to have, right?
Right.
Okay. So one last question for you, but before I jump into that, for anybody that's watching or listening that wants to continue following you on this success journey, maybe it's somebody that's in one of the markets that you're in that wants to talk to you about an opportunity to join your team. Or maybe, they are themselves or a client that's looking to, buy a investment, like whatever that may be, because we're all real estate, agents here that are watching, listening to this podcast. Like, where's the best place, Avery, to follow you, get in touch with you, all of that?
Yeah. So Instagram's probably going to be the easiest. It's at the Short Term Shop. And guys, if you are in a vacation rental market, I am hiring. It's particularly one that I've had my eye on forever, that never been able to get anybody, is the Poconos in Pennsylvania. But if you're in any kind of market that you think might work for the Short Term Shop, reach out to me, because we are definitely hiring.
Yep. Love it. Love it. So then, and anybody that's watching and listening to this, if you guys just scroll below, I'll have Avery's Instagram handle, website, all that below. So that way you could just click on it and be taken right to there and follow her there and reach out to her. So, okay. So knowing everything that you know now, and this might be tough because you built such an amazing business in such a quick amount of time. And it sounds like you pretty much did everything right. But knowing everything that you know now, if Avery today could go back with your younger version of yourself, like right when you entered this industry, sit down on a park bench and give yourself a couple pieces of advice that you wished you would have known that would have just accelerated the success trajectory that you're on, what would that advice look like?
Buy more real estate sooner and hire more agents in more markets sooner.
Yep. Love it. Awesome stuff. Yeah, and Avery, I know how busy you are, and the fact that you took time out of your busy day and away from your family to be here with us. It's, it's been a lot of fun and an absolute huge honor.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you having me on today. It's been fun.
Yep, 100%. And those watching and listening, as always, we truly appreciate all of you. Keep crushing it, and we will see you next time. Peace. Joshua Smith here. I truly hope that you enjoyed and got a ton of value out of that interview that you just got done listening or watching here on the GSD Mode podcast. Just one last quick reminder. Look, if you are a real estate agent, if you are a team leader, or if you are a real estate brokerage owner and your business is not exactly where you want and need it to be, and if you want my help for 100% free, zero cost, we can schedule a 100% free Zoom coaching call together where we're going to spend 1 hour on a Zoom call breaking down where your business is currently at, what your 12-month goals are, what your long-term goals and visions are, what you're currently doing, what your biggest obstacles are. After I spend about 10 to 15 minutes having a conversation with you, gathering all that information, then from there, I'm going to map out, once I know about your situation, your business, I'm going to map out my exact recommended strategy to get you from where you're at to where you want to go in the quickest, most effective, efficient, profitable manner possible. So if you want to be like a horse with the blinders on, where you know exactly what you must do, eliminate all that guesswork, where you are 100% dialed in, all you got to do is go out there and execute to make your goals a reality. If that is you and something you want to take advantage of, go to www.gsdmode.com/Zoom call. www.gsdmode.com/Zoom call. Wherever you're watching this, wherever you're listening to this, if you scroll below to the show notes or the video description, if you're on YouTube, or if you're listening to the podcast, the show notes, it'll be the top link at the very top in there that you can just click to that. Or if you're driving down the road, you can always just remember to go to gsdmode.com. You'll see an area on there, top banner on there, to go out there and schedule that. So if you are struggling in your business, I'm throwing you the lifeline right now. It's 100% free. You have my 100% word that you will not leave this free Zoom coaching call without knowing exactly what you must do to get from where you're at to where you want to go. It's going to be no fluff, no bullshit. It's not what we do here in the GSD Mode podcast. We are here to get you dialed in, get your business to the next level. I can't continue doing these forever. They're very time consuming. I freaking love them. I love helping you. I love helping you get dialed in. Love seeing, you guys go out there and crush it and get results, which is why I've been doing this podcast for so long and continue to do it. But with these one-on-one coaching calls, very time consuming on my behalf. Can't continue doing them forever. So if you want to take advantage of this time, go ahead and book this ASAP and I will get you dialed in. I got you back. I got you covered. Looking forward to jamming with you soon. Get www.gsdmode.com/Zoom call. I hope to see you on that call soon, and keep crushing it. Keep kicking ass. Truly appreciate all your support. Peace.